You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast's preview series for the 2021 IPL. We've only got one team left. It's last year's champions, the one and only Mumbai Indians. I'm Jack Hope and I'm joined by Ross Legg. How you doing, Ross?
I'm brilliant, thanks, mate.
I'm joined by Max O'Brown. How you doing, Max?
Very well, thank you.
And I'm joined by Dan Weston. How are you doing, Dan?
Fantastic. Looking forward to Mumbai Indians, my favourite team.
Yeah, well, that's good. Before we get into things, just a quick reminder to like, subscribe, click the bell on whatever platform that you are listening or watching on. You can find us at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK, 9:30 in India, we will be doing a live stream, our first ever live stream. Hopefully the technology works. We're going to be talking all about the IPL, making some predictions, answering your questions, and having a really good time. Mumbai Indians, they are the best team. They're maybe, lots of people have been saying they're the best T20 team in the history of the format. Before we get to them, though, it's important that we set the scene, talk a little bit about Mumbai, as we have with all 7 other cities or states involved in this tournament. Mumbai is, of course, the most populous city in India, which I believe makes it the most populous in the world, as we did Delhi last week or yesterday, and they were second. So here we are. Look, this is the center of the universe. It's the home of India's first ever train line. It's the home of India's first ever bus service, and it's the location of the most expensive house on the planet, called Attilia, I think is the name of that. If you want to know the address, Attilia, Mumbai, a £1 billion house owned by the Ambanis, who coincidentally own Mumbai Indians themselves. Last year, Mumbai won the tournament, and based on that, a lot of people have been saying they're the best ever T20 team, not even franchise, best ever T20 team. Dan, is that accurate? Are these boys the best ever?
I think there's a really strong case to say that is the fact. The facts of the matter. Last year, they were overwhelmingly the best team in the comp. They had a 3.5% roughly net boundary percentage, which is batting boundary percentage minus bowling boundary percentage, and that's just unseen in T20 cricket. You just don't see teams with that, and it's quite worth noting as well that I think it was 2018 when they didn't qualify, when they had the Netflix documentary. They actually had a great underlying metrics that year as well, but they just lost a load of tight games, and then the matches they won were just really, really dominant as well. So, yeah, they had bad variance in that one year. Not just the best team, but I think they have the best processes as well. So we've talked a bit in the other 7 previews, team previews, that we've kind of panned a lot of the team's processes and strategy and decisions and stuff, but you can't really pick nearly as many holes in the Mumbai strategy and processes, and they tick a lot of boxes in terms of the clear due diligence that they do in their scouting and recruitment.
Just on that 3% net boundary rate, that to translate that into runs, that's like a 12, 15 run advantage that they've got over other teams just because they hit more boundaries. And when we talk about boundary percentage, that is the kind of thing that we mean. That's why we talk about it, basically, because it's a huge margin. They're coached by Mahela Jayawardene. They are captained by Rohit Sharma. They wear a fetching blue uniform or kits, depending on which part of the world you're in. In terms of players, it's really hard to start here because these boys are absolutely stacked. I mean, like to the extent where each one of their positions, 1 through 11, they are like, if you did a power rankings of all the IPL equivalents, they're like first, second, or third in pretty much every position. Max, I'm going to come to you first. So I want to hear your thoughts on this lineup. What would scare you most as an opposition player about this Mumbai team? Because I've been looking at it all day and I'm not sure.
For me, I think it's the fact that it's just absolutely relentless.
For a lot of, so what I mean by that, I guess, is that for a lot of other teams, you look at the squad and then you try and work out what their best 11 is out of that. And like you kind of, for a lot of the positions, you're like, yeah, that's definitely their best player, blah, blah, blah. For Mumbai Indians, every single slot just falls into place. And you can just see from 1 to 11 exactly who's supposed to be there and exactly why they're supposed to be there. And you know what they do well. And in particular, that batting lineup where you've got Rohit, De Kock, Kishan, Sky, Pollard, Hardik, Krunal. That's just runs all day long. You got runs for years there, and you come up across against that, and you think, oh well, at least maybe we can get something out of their bowling attack, and then you've got Trent Bolt and Jasprit Bumrah to come in, and you're 4 for 3 after 4 overs, and it's like it is just astonishing how good they are throughout the team. So yeah. I suppose the short answer is absolutely everything about them.
That was a good answer. Because they're so good, there's actually not that much to talk about in terms of selection dilemma. Some of the other teams have really been able to get into the detail, and you should go back and listen to the whole series if you haven't. For this one, though, Max, you touched on it there. The role clarity is what stands out. Ross, I'm going to come to you on that. What do we mean when we say role clarity? Because it's a bit of a boring phrase, but it is incredibly important to building a good T20 team, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's that bit when you go into a team, you see a lot of inconsistency. So Virat Kohli for India has real role clarity in what he's trying to do in his head, but for RCB, that role is not the right role for the team. So there's a bit where the team, each individual needs to know what they are there to do in that side. Dan always talks about what phases you bowl and etc. They have a clear plan of when they're going to bowl Jasprit Bumrah. They have a plan of when Kieron Pollard is going to decide to turn his arm over. There's just that bit where each of them knows, right, this is how I'm playing. This is the approach that we are going to take. And in this situation, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. None demonstrate that in a better way, I think, than Ishan Kishan. Ishan Kishan into the side, star is the rock star. He's got a mullet, he's got an ear pierced. What more do you want? Oh, he smashes sixes for fun. Just going to team with that carefree, but matched with a brilliant ability to just go in and smash runs is exactly what they look for. And I think as the third person to say it, each of those line up in that 11 knows what they are there to do.
I think the other thing that really stands out for them, and you saw this in last year's tournament, is that because they've got such a clearly defined idea about how they're going to play cricket, when like something potentially disruptive, like a change of captain happens, it literally doesn't matter. They just move the new guy in to replace. I mean, last year someone came in for Rohit Sharma. Didn't really matter who it was. They knew what they'd have to do. Pollard took over, and everyone was like, "Oh, Pollard's actually a really good captain." So he didn't really have to do anything. Everyone, all he had to do was turn up, and everyone else was they get off the bus, they assemble in the right order. Like it's
self-assembling flat pack.
It's a really well-oiled machine. And the one question that we've had on Twitter, we had this from Nakul Panda, who's been on the show, as well as a few others, was that there might be a little bit of a question mark around spin. So Chahar is probably their frontline spinner. They ended up shuffling him around, and he didn't play in the playoff matches last year. We've seen him for India recently, and I think we were quite impressed with him at the international level. Dan, is it correct that they might be a little bit weak in the spin department? Or in fact, is it that Chahar just hasn't quite built the reputation that his talent deserves?
I think both can be true. So if we look at the numbers from last year's tournament, spin economy was an issue for them compared relatively to pace economy compared to the other teams, if you like. It was worse than average, their spin economy, and the team in general struggled with their middle overs economy, which was over 8 and the second worst in the comp. They also bowled the least amount of spin out of all teams in terms of percentage of balls bowled last season as well. So that indicates perhaps that they weren't too confident of their spin attack. You mentioned about Rahul Chahar being dropped for the final, and I think that was quite match-up reasons with Jayant Yadav playing as an off spinner against Delhi's left-handers, basically, which makes a lot of sense. But I don't mind Chahar. I think he's decent enough. I'm certainly picking him as my frontline leg spinner over Paish Chawla. And
boy.
the question is that, you've got Krunal back up as a slow left armour. In an ideal world, I think you could say would bin off Neesham. I don't think he'll play. I don't think he adds any value. And I'll pick up another batter who bowls off spin. So someone like Mo and Ali would have been perfect. And there's other examples of players who didn't go and Sol probably as well. But that would be something as well. So if against those left-hander heavy teams, you don't have to compromise on your batting, or you can still play Chahar as a leg spinner if you want to for other matchups. But you've got the ability to get some off spin overs out of your top 6, if that makes sense as well. So I'm not massively enthused by their spinners, and I think it's probably quite clearly their weakest area. But I don't think it's going to be a massive hurdle for them to overcome at the same time.
Fair enough. I wonder, and Max, maybe you can answer this, whether the fact that they play quite a few games in Chennai at the Chepauk Stadium to kick the tournament off could amplify that chink in the armour to any extent. Do you, or do I sort of, as Dan's saying, you just think that they're so relentlessly good in every other area that they can cover for, maybe a mild deficiency in the spin department?
I think there's maybe a potential for Chennai to highlight that lack of a real frontline spin, but I don't think it'll highlight it enough to sort of change the result of a game. I think, as you say, just everything else about them is so good that it doesn't matter. I think Rahul Chahar is a very decent bowler. I think he had a good year last year, and I think he'll be fine. And I think where they perhaps will benefit this year compared to last year, whereas one of the other weaknesses they had was that you could maybe also try and pick some runs out of the overs that Kieron Pollard had to bowl. Hardik looks like he's bowling again now, so that will fill in a lot of holes, and he will be really useful for them as well. So I think they've got enough in the rest of the areas of the team to cover any potential spin deficiencies for sure.
He basically bowls off spin off a long run up half.
Well,
the time
yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
Just
Cutters all day long, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, Ross, one for you, and this is framed around whether we'll see a breakout star on this team. I don't think we will. I think we're going to see a really settled 11. But they did pick up Tendulkar's son, Arjun. How many games is he going to play?
It might get a ceremonial run out, like a grand horse kind of gets kind of around when you're putting it out to kind of pasture. He'll get put out just like, oh, we have Tendulkar's son. It is beautiful, and he bowls left arm medium fast. I think potentially there might be some kind of something like that.
Yeah. Maybe that could
in
be
the last
funny.
game when they're already top.
So yeah, I think
rest everyone again.
Yeah, I reckon that's the extent that we'll see him.
Yeah. So they are the most successful team in the tournament. They've won it 5 times. They were runner-up once as well. That's pretty good. They've only been 13, and they've won more than a third of them. That's mental. They are 5-2 to win the tournament overall, which gives you a pretty clear indication that they're favourites again. Ross, will you be putting any money on the three-peat happening?
So what I don't like in sport is when one team just dominates. Like it's a little bit dull, it's a little bit boring. But we talked about in some of the previous shows around England white ball team being one of the greatest of all time if they go on and win the World Cup. There is a bit here where they're going down as the best team in franchise history. This specific team, they have the opportunity to do that, I think, and I think that is such a major motivator in some bits that I think it would be silly to put your money elsewhere, especially when it's only been the mini auction. It's frustrating to admit, but it's really difficult to see past this team.
Not only that, it's not just only been a mini auction, but it's also only been about 6 months.
Yeah.
Normally you've got a year in between, but we're barely out of the last IPL.
Yeah.
So one for Dan or Max, or maybe you can both chip in here. We're obviously all like big buyers of the Mumbai Indians hype, but is there any doubt in either of your minds about this team, or if you were an opposition, strategist, Is there anything that you'd be saying to your players to try and get them to take advantage of something, maybe balance things out at all?
From my perspective, I would say that, I mean, it depends how they structure up with the bowling, but I think the biggest problem that you can cause them, arguably, would be to try and target a few of their weaker bowlers. So if you let Bumrah take one for 25 off his 4 or whatever, but the other, if you can target a Chawla or a Rahul Chahar or a Coulter or a Krunal or a Pollard or a Hardik, and try and cause them problems by hitting the lesser bowlers out of the attack and force them to make decisions that they don't want to have to take, if that makes sense. They've got that clear role clarity, and if you can try and force them to deviate from that, I think that would be a good starting point. But it's tough. It's tough to really pick holes in a team that's relatively unexploitable compared to the other teams.
Nathan Coulter-Nile, though, that's surely a gaping hole.
That's the one gap, isn't it, in the Mumbai Indians team, that player. And I think you touched on it, didn't you, in some of the auction preview shows, Dan, and that Jai Richardson would make this team absolutely unstoppable. And I think that sort of the more you look at that team and just see that glaring name of Nathan Coulter-Nile in there, the more it becomes obvious that there is that just one little slot left that is perhaps where you might be able to get some joy against this Mumbai Indians team. But they've got people who can bowl from like 5 down. So even if you do manage to hit a couple of them out the game, there's always an option to kind of muddle it about a bit. So it is, like you say, very, very difficult. I think the best hope you've got of beating Mumbai Indians is taking them to a super over.
Yeah, that is true. They weren't so great at them last year. Just to complete everything then, and this has been one of our short shows, but basically we haven't got that much to say apart from this team are,
I mean, eulogising about one team is a bit boring, isn't it?
Ask us loads of questions tomorrow in the live stream, 9:30 p.m. India, 5 p.m. UK. Vinay asks, who's the 4th overseas player? And are we all kind of agreed that they're going to start at least with Coulter-Nile? Ross?
I really hope not. I just think it just doesn't offer as much as I think that they could have got someone in that position to do so. And Dan, you talk about a luxury player. Like this guy is luxury because he's not very good. And there's just a bit where carrying a player is just it shouldn't happen in this side. And but what their other options are? They're probably not going to play Marco Jansen. Jimmy Neesham, as Dan's already said, is just probably a worse version of Nathan Coulter-Nile in this kind of rank. So
Adam Milne.
I think watching him for New Zealand recently, he is a good option, and I think there is a bit where he offers something a little bit different. But Dan, you talked about it. I think you positioned him on the things as a money ball kind of pick for this Mumbai Indians side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think there is. If there's going to be one person I trust in this podcast to tell me that Adam Milne is a good player, it's probably going to be Dan.
Yeah, I really, really rate Adam Milne, and it's not surprising that the team who do the best due diligence for their recruitment picked Adam Milne. These numbers at the death are superb. He's a good power play bowler as well. He can probably bowl 3 phases, and the only problem with Adam Milne will be an IPL superstar if he stayed fit over the last 5 years. He's just had too many injuries, and that's what's kind of derailed his career a little bit. On ability, I have him probably as at least a top 10 pace bowler in the world. So I rate him that highly. So it's just a question of consistent output on the pitch when he's fit, basically. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's interesting. And I would like to see Adam Milne get some good game time for MI this year. Just to strike even more terror into the opposition of Mumbai Indians.
Right, guys. Final prediction of all of our previews. Where do we all think they're going to win? Let's start with you, Dan. Are Mumbai Indians going to win the IPL in 2021?
I never go as far as to say anyone will win, because they're probably going to have to win like 2 65-35 matches after qualifying to do so, and obviously that's not a given. But I would be utterly shocked if they didn't qualify. More shocked than when you said that Delhi might consider batting Steve Smith at 6 if they didn't qualify. So yeah, just top 2 in the group and then go from there, basically.
Max O'Brown, will Mumbai Indians win the IPL?
There's always a chance that in a one-off knockout game things could all go a bit weird, but I cannot, for the life of me, put my money on that happening. I think they're gonna run away with a third in a row for me.
Ross, are you on the three-peat train?
Yeah, and I really don't want them to win, right? I don't want any IPL teams to win. If I look back at all my analysis that I've done, there's not too many teams that I'm sitting there going, I'm really happy if they're champions. But this is a team which I think has done the due diligence. It has the players, has the strategy. And actually, if you have all of those culminating and a well-run franchise, then you deserve to win competitions. So this should start to be the blueprint moving forward. But you are still going to get mad chaos houses like RCB, Sunrisers. So these guys provide a bit of stability in the world. So, I think they're going to win.
Well, they're clearly the favourites, aren't they? Anyway, thank you very much for listening or watching. We've been the Cricket Podcast. We'll be back, like I said, one more time, 5 p.m. UK time tomorrow, 9:30 Indian time for our live stream. I hope nobody's clocks change in between, and that's been wrong for the last 4 episodes. It could happen, couldn't it? We'll tweet about it loads though at the Cricket Pod. Catch you tomorrow.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.